Hi, thanks for joining us for Advanced Bereishit for Beginners. This week we take a look at the begats of chapter 5 and find the importance of tracing the spiritual genetics given to Adam is more critical than Rebbe Akiva's Klal Gadol BaTorah. Thanks again for learning with us and enjoy. We are rocking and rolling with chapter 5. So we're going to start with two quotes, Kadarkenu Bakodesh, and then I'm going to try to move kind of fast and get through all of chapter 5 tonight so that we have time to do chapter 6 and then hopefully a review, summary, and siyum before Rosh Hashanah.
We don't have to stop this, on Rosh Hashanah. And I'm just saying we could keep going with this for a while.
I hear you.
I'm just throwing that out there.
Okay, so the first quote is from Vladim Nabokov, and he says as follows, I need
Lolita?
you.
The guy who wrote Lolita?
Yes. Very good. I need you, the reader, to imagine us, for we don't really exist if you don't. The second quote is from Pierre Delhar de Chardin. I hope I pronounced that well. My French is abysmal. It's the destiny of things real to destroy those that are artifice. Interesting.
That famous book by Nabokov, right?
My sister saw a thing yesterday.
What?
My sister saw a thing.
Where?
Saratoga.
Yeah, fine.
That's crazy. Okay.
70 years old.
7 years young. Let's start chapter 5. Who would like to take us away? Don't worry, this is probably the easiest chapter.
Not my alley. Okay. Zeh.
And just to interrupt you, before I interrupt you, I will not interrupt the entire chapter. We're going to go through the whole thing, and then we'll go back.
Zeh Sefer Todos Adam. This is the Sefer of the generations, you translate, or?
Generations, sure. The offspring.
I mean, the English now says developments.
Okay.
Developments of man. B'yom baro Elokim Adam b'dmus Elokim asavsa. On the day that Hashem created man, or Adam.
On the day.
On the day.
Right.
B'yom. He made him like Hashem. He made him like himself. His image of God. He made him. Zohar Acheva Baram. He created males and females. But he blessed them. Yikra Shemam Adam B'yom Adaram. And he called them Adam on the day that created them. The Adam Shoshu Mashana, and Adam was 130. Vayole ben Musa Gatzama Vikman Shmo Shates. And then he had his third child, right? 130. And he named him Shates.
Correct.
From Shates. So you may Adam Acho Yolido Shates Shmona Meo Shana Vayole Banim Vanos. And he lived after having Shates another 800 years, and he had more boys and girls. But you call him Adam Asher Chai Shameo Shana Shoshim Shana Yamos. And he lived in total 930 years, and then he died. But he Shates Chamesh Shana Mas Shana Leodas Enosh. Shates went 105 years, and he gave birth to Enosh. In Shates Achayolidos Enosh Sheva Shana Mishmona Meos Shana Leodas, and he lived another 807 years, having boys, more boys than girls. So his Biyukarimei Shays Shtemas Shana Chamio Shana Vyamos. So he lived a total of 912. The Enosh Tishim Shana Violetus Canaan. Enosh lived to 90 when he had Canaan, and the Acharei Enosh Olido Es Canaan Chamesh Etzre Shana Shmod Meo Shana Banos. He lived another 815 years, and it was girls. Biyukarimei Enosh Chamesh Shana Meos Shana Yamos. He lived until 905. The Canaan Shivim Shana Vyoris from Halal. He lived 70 years on Halal. By you Canaan, the he Canaan Akre Olido Es Halal Abon Shana Shmona Meos Shana Banos. He lived another 840 years. Had boys and girls. He called me Canaan Eser Shanim Yichameos Shana Vyamos. He lived in total 910 years. Mahalel Chamesh Shana Meshishim Shana Vyodas Yared. And Mahalel lived for how many years? 65 years, and he had Yared. Vayi Mahalel Achrei Olidos Yared Shoshim Shana Shmona Meo Shana V'Yovan Manos, he lived at 830 years. And many boys and girls. And he died. V'Yakani Mei Mahala Chamesh Tishim Shana Shmona Meo Shana V'Yamos. 895 years. V'Yered Shtein Shtein V'Shishim Shana Shana V'Yolet as Chanoch. 162 years when he had Chanoch.
And these are all the firstborn.
So we're going to get into that.
Okay. The Ever after Elidas Chanoch Shmona Meo Shana Meo Banabanos lived another 800 years, and boys and girls. But you become a Shishin Shana Yamos. Lived a total of 962 years. The Chanach Hamesha Shishim Shana V'Yolis Shalach. Lived to 65, and then he gave birth to Shalach. Yishalech Chanochas Elohim after Elidas Shalach. And so he walked, Chanoch walked with God after giving birth to Shalach. Shlosh Meo Shana V'Yolet Banabanos. Only another 300 years. Vayichal Yimei Chanoch Chamesh Shishim Shana V'Shlosh Meo Shana. And he lived a very short life, only 365 years. Yishalech Chanochas Elokim, V'Yimeno Ki Lakach Osa Elokim. So my eyes are behind.
How
Chanoch.
old was Cain when he was killed?
Doesn't say.
Chanoch walked with Hashem, and he was not. Or that means he was not anymore, because Hashem took it.
Right. Let's have someone else pick up from Chafei. Who wants to finish us off?
Let me trade with you. You okay? You see him?
Yeah, my eyes when I'm reading it. I don't see so well.
Where were you?
25.
25?
Okay.
And he lived 100 years, and he gave birth to Lemach. And after he gave birth to Lemach, Meshusach lived another 780 years, and he had both sons and daughters. In the old days of Meshusach was 969 years, then he passed away. Lemach lived 180 years, and then he had a son. He named him Noach, Lema, Zeh, Nachmenu, Ma'akenu, and Nisyon, Yedenu, Ben Adam, Asher Erda Hashem. After he gave us Noah, he called him Noah, that only he can give, with this can give us comfort from our work and from the self-denying toil of our hands, from the earth which Hashem has cursed. And after he gave birth to Noah, Lemach lived another 595 years. And again, he had boys and girls. He clothed the May Lemach in all the days of Lemach, Sheva, Shivim, Shana, Shiva, Meir, Shana, Yamos. For 777 years, and he died. Enoch ben Chamesh Meir Shana, Enoch was already 500 years old. And Noach had Shem as Chamesh Yafes. When Noach gave birth to had Shem Chamesh.
Awesome. Good timing.
Wait, is that the end of the paragraph?
Yes.
That's it. 32.
Huh. Are we going to talk about the parallel lemachs?
Okay, so we're going to talk about all the stuffs. Let's see, where do we start? How did this get to chapter 8? Okay. Let's start with, what is this chapter doing?
It's a transition.
Okay.
We're talking, okay, we're moving on from the Adam story. We're sort of like running the thread, and we're going to start the Noach story. At least having read the book, that's what I think.
Okay. Do we skip ahead like 3 psukim? Do we start talking about, we just ended the chapter with Noach had 3 kids. What would you expect the next chapter to start with? Eila told us Noach, right? Noach had these 3 kids, and here's the story of Noach. We don't get that. We get like 8 psukim in between that don't tell that story at all, don't even mention Noach, and then we come back to him.
Right, fractionation.
Okay, but I hear what you're saying, meaning this is definitely a clear narrative break. We're not continuing the story of chapter 4.
Right.
But these 8 psukim, if they're necessary in the Torah, they really can't be before Adam, because this is
Before
when
can't
it can't be before this parak. Before you start giving, because it seems to be talking about when there's a lot more people around. It's the current
Okay.
period now.
I hear what you're saying. With chapter 6 requires more population, and chapter 5 is how we got to that more population. Okay, I like that. That's interesting. I didn't think of that. Anything else that's useful that we get out of this chapter, besides a lot of begats,
But
which they thankfully in most of the more modern English translations they don't mention the word begat.
we're connecting.
Don't like begat.
I don't. I'm not a begatter.
We're connecting one hero to another hero, so to speak.
Okay.
Okay, we're saying that like this isn't just okay. The story of this person ends, and then the story of this other person begins. There's a connection between those two people. That this like story A has stuff that's worthy of your attention, and story B is worthy of your attention, and those stories are somehow like.
So what you're saying is the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, there were 10 generations from Adam to Noach, and then we're not going to get to it, but in the 11th parak we get another 10 generations from Noach to Avram.
Right.
And so the point of these chapters is to tell you that all the way from Adam to Abraham, you can trace that lineage.
Right, that there's something in this family lineage, legacy that we're supposed to be connecting to or zeroing in on.
I like that a lot. What do you think that could be? Would you want to restate what you just said? Maybe someone else can pick up the thread.
Uh,
Well, then that's what we talk about.
Recurring
each one, like one of the sons. Like, so there's something special about each one of those in every generation or link.
What is special about them? Let's look at the words. Just start with pasuk 3. Adam he lives 130 years, and he gives birth b'dmuto ketzamo v'yikrad shmo Shet.
And he has a bunch of other kids.
Well, that's the next pasuk, and then he has a bunch of other kids, and he lives however long he lives. But I believe what you're getting in this chapter is I'm going to call it genetic tracing. Imagine, to give you a very bad mashal, that you wanted to buy a racing horse. So you need to know that it's a thoroughbred, right? You need to know how its lineage goes back to whatever you're tracing it back to, right? You're getting essentially that, but in spiritual form here. The first pasuk says that Adam was made b'dmut Elokim. We know that. Why are you telling me that Adam is made b'dmut Elokim? Answer: the rest of the parak tells you there's one person that Adam has who's made b'dmuto ketzalmo. That dmut Elokim, whatever that is, that spiritual genetics that Adam was given, got passed down. There was someone else who was created, b'dmut Adam, who is b'dmut Elokim. So, in effect, there is someone else who's made b'tselem Elokim.
It only goes one level.
It only goes right. So why do you think that would be? We talked about this a little bit when Adam and Chava had their curse, that the curse was affecting what they produced. So Adam works in the field, and the produce that he gets from the field is cursed. Chava produces humans. What she's cursed with the production also not being pleasant or having tsar, right?
But she has a bunch of other kids. But this kid came out okay.
Right. She's still able to create. They together are still able to create someone who's B'Tselem Elokim, but they can't create everyone to be B'Tselem Elokim. Just like with the trees rebelled, right? And the trees didn't make Tam Ha'etz Ketam Ha'pri, right? So the offspring of the trees is not the same as what it was supposed to be. So the offspring of Adam, in general, is not what it's supposed to be, except with one exception. Every generation was able to get it, and it sounds like it's the first one who was born, and you can have some maybe connections to the fact that the firstborn is the Kohen. We'll put that to the side. But what you get throughout this entire chapter is there is this Tselem Elokim concept, whatever that means. the spiritual genetics that are embedded in that are passed down generation after generation. We're going to trace it all the way down to Abraham, like you said, right? We're going to do 10 generations now, we'll do 10 generations later, but the point is that there is someone who's made B'Tselem Elokim, and they are able to make someone else who's made B'Tselem Elokim. They can't make a lot of them. Everyone else is irrelevant to our story. He had a bunch of kids. And in fact, the Gemara in Eruvin tells us about the kids that Adam had. Where is it? Eruvin Yudchet Amabet. Amar Rebbe Yirmiyah ben Elazar, Kol Osan Hashem Shahaya Adam Marishon Benidui. All the time that Adam was excommunicated, he separated from his wife, and he had some other children. Holid Ruchin V'Shedin V'Lilin. He gives birth to these spirits and demons and female demons, and the Medrash Hagadol adds and kofim and monkeys. Shenemar Vayichi Adam Shloshim U'Me'at Shana V'Yola B'Dmuto Ketzalmo Mechlad Ad Ha'idna Lav Ketzalmo Olid. It means that until this time, Adam had, if Adam at 130 had someone who was B'Demuto Ketzalmo, it implies that he had other kids who were not B'Demuto Ketzalmo, i.e. these offspring that are not godly. If
they're slightly imperfect, like the socks at Marshall's.
If you recall the conversation we had about there being other people around, these are those other people. Right, we were talking about who are they worried about despoiling the garden, and who is Cain afraid of, and who's he marrying? And we said there's other people that are outside of the story. That's what you're getting in this parak is those other people. Everybody here has other children besides the one who's B'Tselem Elokim. The Torah is not interested in telling you the story of everybody else. It wants to trace very meticulously that lineage of B'Tselem Elokim from one generation to the next, all the way down to the people that we want to talk about.
So it doesn't make a difference that only he says the word Kasamo in the first from Adam to Shais? It doesn't make a difference that the others don't have that lashon?
What do you mean?
I'm saying it says.
It doesn't say the phrase, but right? But it's following the same pattern. It's telling you X had Y, and then had a whole bunch of other kids. And it starts the pattern with there's someone who's B'Demuto Ketzalmo, and he hands that over to the next person, and the next to the next. It's not going to go through the exact phraseology. It's basically just once you get the pattern, here's the pattern repeated over and over again.
And yet, if we're to believe, as the Psukim seem to lead us, that the firstborn child is the one who carries that, then it's interesting to note that it's not the switcheroo where the youngest takes over the precedence from the oldest. This is just straight up Bechor through these years.
From one to the next.
What's up with that?
Yeah, that's a fair point. I don't know. Okay.
The Kedusha comes through the Bechor.
Mm-hmm.
The Kedusha comes through the Bechor.
Right, but that being said, Hevel, gets the, Hevel supplants Cain before he gets killed.
Well,
and, we have this whole recurring theme of the younger supplanting the older, especially in, like, the later things, like, Yitzchak versus Yishmael and Yaakov versus Esav, and, even to an extent Moshe versus, Aaron and Miriam. Like, he's the youngest, So I'm just wondering, like...
Shem also, it's a little confusing whether he was
really
old.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe young.
Right, it's weird that we see it sometimes and not others. David HaMelech, is the last of the kids. You just see this thing where...
This parak I was just really interested in the numbers, not the...
okay, so let's talk about the numbers.
Because it's important to know...
Right, why do we care about how long they lived, right?
Oh, because it tells you where you are in history,
Right.
We know when the flood was in 16...
Right, that's true.
1948.
1948,
so, whatever, so it was always... I always just concentrate on the numbers.
So, Professor Moshe David Kasuto wants to claim that all of these numbers are symbolic, that basically all the numbers are either powers of 10 or 5 or 10, so they end in either a 0 or a 5, and then there's a bunch of exceptions. And I think this is actually very ingenious the way he describes this, is the number 7 is very symbolic, especially in this chapter, and if you look at the numbers that don't end in 5 or 10, they either are a full number plus 7, so he lived to 165 plus 7, he lived to 172, or it's the number plus 7 2 times. You will never get an age that ends in the number 1, the number 3, or the number 4. It's either 0, 5, or 2 and 9 because you either added one 7 or 2 7s to the 5. I think that's really interesting when you think about like Sarah's life is 120 and 7, right? It's that complete number. It's 120 and then it's plus 7. So that's symbolic. Even the list that we have is over the course of the last 2 chapters, we got the list of the genealogy of Cain, and now we got the list of genealogy of Shem.
Then why those numbers?
Why which numbers?
Why those numbers?
Why 5s or 10s?
No. Why each individual has a specific.
He doesn't go into that level of specificity. He's just saying that whatever numbers were assigned to them for whatever reason, they were done symbolically.
But he doesn't explain what the symbology is.
No. The academics very rarely explain why there's that kind of symbolism. They just find a pattern and say, okay, here.
Yeah, but the pattern means nothing then.
I hear you. It's interesting, but it's not meaningful.
It's worthless.
Yeah.
It's worthless because it doesn't tell you why.
Right.
Right.
It's like, it's a piece of the puzzle, but it's like what do I do with this one piece? I
Right.
can't make a jigsaw puzzle with
What's
one.
it a picture of?
Right, exactly.
Well, they'll use it to say it's reinforcing this idea that the number 7 is very important and used throughout. We're going to see right
Yeah,
now.
That's all good and well, but why these numbers?
Right.
By definition, if they're saying these numbers are not real.
Right. Well, some of them you can see. Someone lives to 777, right? That's a very clearly symbolic number.
Yeah, it's Chabad.
Right. You get Chanoch, who lives to 365, which is the days of the year.
Right.
Right. So
Of the lunar year.
of the
Solar
solar
year.
Solar.
Lemech lives to 777, and he is the 7th in line, right? So there's a 7 that recurs even from Cain's line. Adam through the Lemech in Cain's line is 7 generations, and then Adam through Noach is 10 generations. So you have that 10 and 7 being repeated just in. The other thing that a lot of people do is compare the names. So I'll read off. They're not in order.
And Lemma.
All the names of Cain's line and Shes's line overlap, with the exception of Shes and Enosh. So we have I'll do the Cain line and then I'll compare it to the Shes line. You have Cain in the Cain line and you have Canaan in the Shes line. You have Chanoch and Chanoch. You have Irad and Yored. You have Michuyael and Michalolel. You have Misushael and Misushelach. And then you have Lamech and Lamech. And they are both, and then you have Lamech in the Cain line has 3 sons, and so he's the last of the line. So it's Lamech, 3 sons, and then he has Nama. So the last of the Shes line is also a man who has 3 sons. Shem, Cham, and Yafes is Noach, and Noach and Nama have a parallel in their names as well. And you also have the bookend where you start with Adam, who has three sons, and then you end with someone on both lines who has 3 sons. So there's some clear parallels that you can draw between the 2 lines to tell you essentially we're trying to tell you one story. One story. The story is, how did I get whatever is in Adam down? How did it come through the various generations? And an interesting Sifra tells us how important it is to know that. The Sifra, everyone I think probably knows the first part, which is, it starts with a pasuk in Vayikra. The pasuk says, Lo tikam v'lo titar es b'nei amecha. You should not take revenge and bear a grudge against the children of your people. But, says the Medrash, no keim ata v'noter la'akum. But you can bear a grudge and take revenge against the non-Jews. And then the pasuk continues, v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You should love your neighbor as yourself. So what does Rabbi Akiva say?
Zeh klal gadol b'Torah.
Zeh klal gadol b'Torah. But what is the rest of the Medrash? Ben Azai Omer. Ben Azai says, Zeh Sefer Toldot Adam. This is the book of the Toldot of Adam. That's our parak. That's our pasuk. Zeh klal gadol mizeh. This first pasuk in our parak, this is the genealogy of Adam. That is an even more important thing than v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha.
Right.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
Who
I
wants
hope
to take
there's
a,
some Mefarshim that unpack that one.
Who wants to take a stab at that one?
That I don't know. I have an idea.
Yeah, let's hear.
I don't. So like I heard this idea that when we say Shema, right? It says V'afta es Hashem Elokecha b'chol levacha b'chol nafshecha b'chol me'odecha, right? So we translate me'odecha to mean like all your resources. But the person I heard it from said that me'od means like extra or very much. Like it's not just your resources, it's like it's what makes you extra. You all have a heart, you all have a soul that you should love God with, but everyone else has stuff that's extra, that's beyond what makes us stam human, and we're supposed to love and serve God with all that extra stuff. Okay? Which I think is a beautiful idea. And so Eila told Adam, I think, I'm just guessing here, okay, is maybe kind of similar to that in that Eila told Adam, like, when you read the Torah, we all have the stuff that makes us intrinsically human, that we have a heart and a soul, and whatever makes us, like, unique, okay, but there are a lot more, there's the things that make us the same, there's stuff in here, like these Toldot, there's something for us to get out of each of these generations, because that intrinsic humanness is something that we're supposed to connect to. Does that make any sense?
I think I hear what you're saying. Let me try to say it back to you, and you can tell me if this is what you meant. V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha is a mitzvah that is external. It's God telling you, see that other person, you might not inherently love them, you should love them. I'm commanding you to love them.
Right.
Zez Sefer Toldot Adam is, see that person? Yeah. They're related to you.
Right.
They're family.
Right.
How could you not love family?
Right. They have a connection.
You all have the same source.
Right. Yeah.
Right? You're all, especially if you're Jewish. I mean, we saw that your lo sikam v'lo titor doesn't apply to Akum. You're all made b'tselem Elokim.
Right.
That's the whole point of the parak, is to tell you we got that Tselem Elokim and we found a way to keep it alive generation after generation, all the way to Abraham, meaning all the way to you. And if you see that other Jew walking down the street, I don't have to command you to love him. He's your brother. He's literally your brother. You both are made b'tselem Elokim. You come from Adam Harishon. How could you not love him? I have to show up and tell you to love him. Okay, so if that's like the B'di Eved, so we'll go with Rabbi Akiva. But Ben Azai wants to look at it as, you don't have to command me. The second you tell me that we're all from the same shorish, I'm going to love him naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Is that where you were?
It's close. Yeah, that's the direction I was going. Is that we should see ourselves in each other.
Yes.
That the intrinsic, we should see our intrinsic humanness in each other, and that that should bring us together. So I think you reset it very well.
Okay. Thank you.
Thought, Charlie.
Thank you.
I want to point out just one or two other small things, but they are, at least to me, they're interesting. In Pasuk Bet, we have a very rhythmic, rhyming Pasuk. And you have to pay attention to read it that way, and it comes across as almost poetic. Zachar nukeva baram, vayvarech otam, vayikra shemam adam b'yom hi baram. You hear the melody?
Scansion.
Could be.
Yeah. No, scansion is like the...
Like staccato.
Right, yeah. Like the rhythm of it.
Yeah. That's, again, you see that Torah is not just written as information. There's like there's a musicality to it, even without the trop, just in the way the words are written. The other thing that nobody, I think until Nachum Sarna points this out, I missed it myself, but I did not see any of the classical Mefarshim deal with this. In Pasuk Gimel, who names Shet? In Pasuk Gimel, Parak Hey, Pasuk Gimel, who names Shet?
Presumably Adam.
Adam. Why is that a problem?
Chava named all the other kids.
Chava named Shet. Go back to Parak Daled.
Right. Yeah, we saw that.
Parak Daled Pasuk Chav Hey, Vateled ben vatikra eshmo shet kishat li elokim zera acher tachat hevel ki hargo kayin.
Huh. That is weird.
I have not seen anybody address that, and I would be more than ecstatic if you could find me
So you said until you
someone.
saw somebody else.
Hmm?
You said
Nachum Sarna brings up the question. He doesn't. No, he just leaves it as a question.
It is a
Again,
steal.
it's the academic way. It's like,
Oh.
here you
know
go.
what?
Do something with that
I've
jigsaw
heard
piece.
from my teachers, sometimes a good question is better than a bad answer.
It's different shapes.
Different shades?
Mhm.
How could
No.
like?
Adam and Chalid more than one shade.
Yeah. Well, good.
All right, this kid's gonna. Let's try again with this one. We'll name him Seth. Also,
The only other thing I'll point out, people have probably heard the stories of Chanoch, right? Is everyone familiar with the midrash and what happened to Chanoch? Don't all call it at once.
Well, wait, what happened?
Chanoch. So Chanoch is different. Everyone else has the exact same pattern, and then we get to Chanoch, and he lives shorter. The only other person who breaks the pattern is Noach. Noach has his kids when he's 500. Everyone else has their kids when they're like
100.
between 100 and 200, right?
Which also, I'm saying, the note, not the notes, but implies it wasn't their firstborn.
Right.
Right. You would think.
You would think. Vayichi Chanoch 5 shana v'yoled es mesushalach vayishalei Chanoch es Elohim acharei holidos mesushalach shalosh meos shana v'yoled banim banos. So what does this walk with God mean? He's walking with God, and then Vayi kol yimei Chanoch 5 shana ushlosh meos shana vayishalei Chanoch es Elohim again ve'inenu, and he was not ki lakach oto Elohim, because God took him.
Right.
What
So
does
they
that
said
mean?
that he was righteous and he was going to turn evil, and God took him before he did. That's what we hear.
Right.
From the
So
Midrash.
okay, so there's more medrash than that. The medrash that I think is sweetest is Chanoch's job was a shoe cobbler, and with every stitch of the shoe, he would say Baruch Shem Kavod Machoto Leolam Va'ed, that he was basically constantly involved with God, and so he
Horseshoe or regular shoe?
regular shoe.
I just watched a 15-minute video of a guy changing a horseshoe.
I can't even imagine.
15 minutes.
Why?
It's just incredible, the amount of detail and like holding a horse's foot for
And not
15
getting
minutes
kicked.
and just going through the process. It's like a pedicure for horses.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
If you'd like, I could show you video of a pedicure.
This is much better.
Yeah.
So Chanoch goes up to Gan Eden without dying. He's ve'inenu means he was no longer alive. Not that he died. That's why it doesn't say v'yamot. And there is a medrash that he changed from a person into a malach, specifically the malach Metatron. We talked about this malach a long time ago. I don't want to go too far into that because it smacks of other religions.
Isn't a Metatron the thing that sits on top of a piano?
No, that's
metronome.
A metronome.
Oh.
Yeah.
I thought Megatron was like a transformer.
Yeah, that's Megatron.
Okay, and with that, we will please God pick up with chapter 6 next week.
We didn't